Do you love your town? Do you love it enough to help it reach its full potential? Towns throughout California are in the process of revising their general plans, and state law gives you a very rare opportunity to have an outsized impact on how your town will evolve over the next decade. In fact, state law requires the town to correct certain deficiencies in the general plan revisions that you might identify. If you live in Portola Valley, the time to act is now. Your input has to be received by 5 p.m. on November 29th. Stick with me and I'll walk you through the process as I understand it, and I'll give you a few suggestions for making your comments more effective. I'll also ask that you consider requesting an extension. The amount of time we've been given is simply insufficient to adequately review a complex 300-page document. Let's dive in. A general plan is mandated by the state of California for towns such as ours. As a kind of constitution for the town, it defines priorities and articulates policies and programs. The general plan provides guardrails for development and for future town councils. As a result, it is critically important that it be crafted with care. A poorly designed general plan can have devastating effects on environment, safety, and quality of life that will be difficult, if not impossible, to repair. Our general plan is in the process of being revised and updated, driven primarily by state-mandated changes to the housing element. General plan revisions are subject to review under the California Environmental Quality Act, often referred to as CEQA. CEQA requires that the environmental impacts of a town action be identified, fully evaluated, and, if significant, mitigated. Portola Valley has conducted the lowest level of environmental review for the proposed changes to the general plan, referred to as an initial study, or IS. The IS has determined that all potential impacts are either not significant or have been avoided, reduced, or minimized below the threshold of significance. This outcome results in what's called a mitigated negative declaration, MND, which is the decision document associated with the analysis in the IS. Under CEQA, the town must solicit public comments and correct any deficiencies that are identified. If the town fails to adequately respond to the comments, the public may challenge its response by filing a legal complaint. The reason the public comments are so important is that if a legal challenge is pursued, it must be limited to the substance of the public comments. I encourage you to review the topics listed in the table of contents of the IS/MMD. Are there areas that are of particular interest to you? Those are the ones you should focus on. The IS/MMD concludes that with the mentioned mitigation, the general plan changes will not have a significant impact. If you agree with these conclusions, and you believe that the conclusions are based on adequate analysis, then you don't need to do anything. On the other hand, you should submit a comment if any of the following are true. Important, potentially significant impacts were not considered. Adequate analysis was not provided to support the conclusion of less than significant impact. Proposed mitigation will not reduce the impact below the threshold of significant impact. Notice that I use the term significant a lot. This is a key threshold in the CEQA framework. Attorneys will bristle when I say this, but rather than attempting to identify the precise legal definition, I suggest that you use your own best subjective judgment about what constitutes a, quote, significant impact. How can you make your comments most effective? This is not the place to generally express whether you like certain aspects of the proposed general plan changes, whether you think they're a good idea, or whether you think they're fair. Questions such as these aren't relevant under CEQA. Instead, this is a place for you to participate in as detailed and specific a manner as you can in the assessment, analysis, and evaluation of various environmental impacts of the changes. Specifically, your comments should identify inadequacies and shortcomings of the initial study. Did Portola Valley consider all potential impacts? If not, identify impacts that were not considered. Is the evaluation of each impact full, complete, and accurate? If not, explain why. Does the analysis support the finding that a potential impact is or is not significant? If not, explain why. For impacts that are significant, would the proposed mitigation actually reduce the impact to below the threshold of significance? If not, explain why. Here are some suggestions for language to use in your comments. Refer to the revisions of the general plan that are being addressed by the initial study as the, quote, project, end quote. Reference the impacts of the project as much as possible. The impacts are the basis of the CEQA analysis. Does the initial study assert a conclusion that's not based on analysis? Then it's conclusory. Are the assumptions about the number of new housing units, additional traffic trips, uses of parks, etc., consistent with each other and with your perception of what the project will do to our town? Use language such as, the IS failed to consider. The analysis of the IS is inadequate because. The IS erroneously identified the potential impact of X as not significant. In fact, the impact is significant because. The conclusion of the IS-MMD is conclusory because supporting analysis was not provided. The IS used general information, not information specific to Portola Valley. As the lead agency, the town is obligated to respond to each unique comment. If it receives what is effectively the same comment from multiple different people, it will aggregate the comments and give a single response. To avoid redundant effort, try to collaborate with others to assign responsibility for different areas. Finally, the 30-day comment period offered by the town is the minimum required by state law, but hardly adequate to meaningfully digest and comment on this complex document, especially since the only public presentation of the ISMMD was at the November 16th Planning Commission meeting, less than 2 weeks before the deadline. The town can extend the comment period. I encourage you to request that it does. To do so, send an email to Laura Russell, lrussell@portolavalley.net, and the housing email channel, housing@portolavalley.net. Points to consider making are shown. A disclaimer. I'm drawing on what I've been told by people with experience in the area, but I'm not a lawyer and I've not been through this process before. I've relayed the facts as I understand them, but please have a low threshold for verifying what I'm saying. Allow me to make a couple of editorial comments. First, just as we respect and comply with state law that mandates an aggressive increase in housing in our community, we should respect and comply with all elements of state law, including CEQA law. There's nothing impolite or unseemly about objecting if the analysis of the initial study fails to meet the requirements of CEQA. Doing so is no less an exercise in compliance with state law than the work that the Housing Element Committee engaged in over the last year. It should be treated with the same respect and deference. Let's satisfy our state housing mandates, but let's do so safely and in a way that complies with all relevant state laws. Second, we shouldn't submit comments that are irrelevant or insubstantial as a form of protest. That's not what I'm advocating. Such gestures don't do any good and waste precious time and effort that's better spent in other ways. That's all I got for this video. If you found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and most importantly, share the link with your neighbors. I'm Bob Turcott. Thanks for watching, thanks for considering, and thanks for participating.